There may be a climate price for cleaner air. I'm meteorologist Don Paul, and this is my podcast, Bits o' Blather on Weather, Climate, and from time to time, some humor. First, some history on dirty air in America in particular. Growing up, I lived in a part of New Jersey which was a frequent recipient on southwest winds of particulate and gaseous pollutants from the many industrial plants and refineries lining the New Jersey Turnpike north of New Brunswick, New Jersey. And you can still see many of these if you ever have to take a drive along the Turnpike to Newark Airport. These pollutants were very evident. And I remember my first new car being a 68 Beetle with very high gloss enamel paint. After I'd wash it and dry it, I could actually see particles of soot settling on the paint. And by the next day, I could whisk a lot of that soot off the car with a soft cheesecloth, and then a new batch of particles would begin to fall on the car immediately. So we were all seeing and smelling, in many cases, these pollutants, not just in the New York and North Jersey area, but in other parts of the country as well. Well, along came Richard Nixon. In 1970, yes, it was Richard Nixon who founded the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And this wasn't just window dressing. He put in charge of the agency a distinguished and accomplished environmental attorney, William Ruckelshaus, who really built up a head of steam in enforcing the new Clean Air Act and shortly thereafter the Clean Water Act. And while the cleanup is not complete by any means, the quality of the air we breathe for all of the problems we still experience in crowded urban areas is vastly improved over the air we were breathing when I was young. And this is going on in many other parts of the world as well. Even though China is still building coal fired plants, they have stopped building them near many of their major metropolitan areas because they were seeing a lot of premature mortality during air pollution episodes. Unfortunately, though, China is not only building plants away from those cities, but also exporting coal fired technology to third world nations whose economies are going. But in the last 3 years, and 2 years in particular, a new regulation which has been accepted internationally may have given a kick and a boost to cleaner air. And that is now the use of sulfur emitting fuels on the world's transport ships is forbidden and is being observed. And sulfur dioxide, while being a noxious gas, does actually block some of the sun's energy input to the Earth's surface. And this marine fuel regulation has caused a notable drop off in sulfur dioxide in the world's atmosphere, not just exactly where the ships are sailing, but it has a cumulative effect as well. And we've also seen a vast reduction in particulate matters as well. Now, clean air remains a high priority. In 1970, though, while scientific literature had already gotten into the coming global warming due to increased greenhouse gas emissions, the clean air issue was taking priority over the warming because the warming hadn't begun to accelerate much before 1970. So, using the triage method, the clean air was a bigger issue for legislators and for regulators and for health agencies. So, we may have created this problem, which is not yet totally accepted in the scientific literature, but the cleanup of sulfur dioxide is suspected as one of the elements in the spiking of temperatures which really got going last winter when we were still under a La Nina, which normally produces some global cooling, and yet temperatures were spiking even last winter and 4 or 5 months before the currently strong El Nino was even established. And while we were mystified, and to some extent still are, why temperatures were seeming to warm more rapidly this year than in past years, uh, even before El Nino moved in and brought the natural warming atop human activity linked warming, it may be a Faustian bargain. That's been a phrase used by climate scientist James Hansen, where we can't move away from clean air because it may be causing problems in mitigating global warming. They are now both problems, although global warming is seen more as a future existential issue. You can't just start saying, okay, we're going to go back to dirtying up the air again to get its cooling effects back in place. From the 40s through the 70s, the air pollution, the particulates, plus the gases being emitted were helping to cause some temporary cooling in much of the globe. And that has, of course, vanished since we got into the 70s. And especially, uh, we saw acceleration of the warming getting going during the 80s, 90s, and the last couple of decades. So, this is an issue, a set of issues that have no current resolution. It's something to think about. And so, this is an informational episode that I've put together for you. I hope you've gotten some useful information and enjoyment out of it. And if you're enjoying this podcast, I hope you will share and follow because we're looking for some more growth from you people. And you also can interact with me. I know on Spotify, you can actually interact with me, suggest future topics that I might want to try to tackle if I feel competent to do so. So I will chat with you again within a day or two.